No,
Thank you. Well, our multipolarity and our session would be absolutely symbolic unless we provide an opportunity to take the floor to representatives of Europe, where it all started and where it should bring hope to people. That's why I'd like to give the floor to Lorenzo Pacini from Italy. He will take the floor to speak about Italian multipolarity.
Works? Okay. Thank you so much for being here today, because it's a great honor as European, considering a question: where is Europe now? We are building a multipolar world, and no one of the European countries are inside all the partnerships. That's really weird. The multipolar Mediterranean could be an option, as it has been the womb of many civilizations and has been a center of an entire empire who dominated the culture of the West. But now we have such a kind of dinosaurs of geopolitics and international relations because they are stopped to the Atlantic treaties and nothing more. We have BRICS, we have SEO, we have many partnerships, and no one from Europe is participating. Which kind of future could we have in this sense? That's a question, because our politicians, I come from Italy, total disaster, but how can we solve this problem? There is a lack in geopolitical studies in Europe. We don't talk about multipolarity. We need an education in multipolar studies. We need it, because if we talk to the youth about another kind of world possible, they would be fascinated to that, because they feel it. They see they have no future. When I talk to my students, the first thing I see is that they are not able to look forward in more than 1 week. That's terrible. They have 20, 25 years old, and they don't think about the future because they don't have it. They don't have it. They have a war in front of them that is becoming true in Europe as a new battlefield, only because European governments want that. Nobody's asking them except the United States. Neither Russia, neither China, neither India, no one from the rest of the world. So we should apply one of the quotes most known in this country. We should forget the West and try to discover the rest. We have such a great opportunities. In Italy, Italy is loved by everyone. Let me say. You're all laughing because it's true. Because it's true. What are we doing with our culture? What are we doing with our future? We must solve this problem. So that's why we need to open a parallel diplomacy, using also the academic studies, but starting, if possible, since the mandatory studies, since the high schools, since middle schools, to impress in the youth the desire of a different world order. That would be a great first step. As it happened already in the other part of the world, it could really work in our. The entire Europe is waiting for this multipolar awakening of the consciousness, the great awakening instead of the great reset. We really need it. And we ask to all the rest of the world to help us to realize it. Thank you so much.
Hi everyone, welcome to BRICS Briefs. Today we'll be discussing the topics of the EU election, the G7 and multilateralism, political multipolarity, the different types of political philosophies within the BRICS Plus alliance, trade and economic sanctions, especially concerning Russia's frozen assets in European banks. We have a special guest on to help us through these very important topics and their relevance to BRICS Plus. Professor Lorenzo Maria Pacini, welcome.
Thank you so much to all the friends of BRICS Briefs, of Think BRICS channel. Thank you so much.
Oh, no, thank you. Thank you very much for your time. You have a very long bio, Professor. So in short, Professor Pacini is an academic and consultant specializing in political philosophy, geopolitics, and bioethics. He studied philosophy and theology in Rome and earned degrees in aesthetic and political philosophy. He has held positions at various universities, including Unicampus HETG of Geneva and Uni Dolomitti of Belluno. Hopefully I got that right. He is involved in defense and intelligence consulting, journalism, and sports. Additionally, he is the founder of the Center for International Studies on Multipolarity, Daria Dugina, and the director of ideazion.com. If there's it's a very long bio that I saw of you, Professor, and that was just
That's
like a very condensed.
Thank you. It's already too much. Thank you.
That's all right. All right, let's bring on Anastasia. Hi, Anastasia. There we go.
Hi everyone. Hello, Clive. Hello, Lorenzo. Nice to see you here.
Thank you so much.
Thank
nice
you for
to
your
see
time.
you too.
Thank you.
I sort of surprised you there. Sorry. But so look, you saw that video of Lorenzo at the SPIEF recently, and I thought it was really important that we showed that, because you mentioned a few things, and I wanted to have this discussion. Like usually in this, it's a little bit of an interview, right? We have someone, a very highly educated person who knows their stuff, but I would like more to have a discussion rather than an interview, which I think is good, right? A bit of a dialogue. But I really want people to see that 5 minutes that you spoke there, because you spoke about the children, about the young people, and that particularly for me as a father, and a legacy. I think that's mainly why we're here, is to continuously leave that legacy. And that's what I really liked about what you said, particularly because it's very rarely said by politicians, by representatives, professional representatives. So thank you for saying that, Lorenzo. And I hope the young people that listen to our channel, that watch us, recognize that you care about them and are thinking about them in your professional work. So oh sure, yeah. I'm going to bring this up because I want people to, so if you see, the links will be in the description. This is geopolitica.au, and it has the writings of Lorenzo, and there's a lot. They're in different languages. There's many in English. Please have a look. You can see there's multiple pages there. I think you'll be enriched by his work. So please visit, and feedback too. Write comments. Let him know what you think. Okay, let's. Yes. Okay, let's. I think it's important. We really wanted to. The current news, Lorenzo, was that Julian Assange was free, and I was just wondering if you had any comments, and maybe this is a current situation to sort of start at. If you have anything to comment about that. Did you hear about Julian Assange was freed?
About the thing of Julian Assange, I would like to say one thing. With my students of international humanitarian law, we were waiting for this moment for such a couple of years, fighting. I had also some students that were to manifestations for this, and they had also huge problems with Italian police. And I'm so happy because when this morning I woke up and I saw the news, I was like, really, is it a joke? And I was, let me wait 1 hour more. And then I was receiving thousands of messages of death. I started to call friends all world around, and I was like, we can breathe. It's true. Incredible. I think that this today is a great victory for millions of people in the world that were waiting for this and for the freedom of information in the whole world. We must celebrate this. it's an honor to be here in this context, really.
Well, it took
Thank you.
took how many years to celebrate this victory?
5 years.
Even more.
Yeah, plus the 7, I think he was in Ecuador embassy.
Yeah.
So it's been a decade or more. It's amazing. Sorry, I mean, it's a little bit off topic, but it's not in a way, right? Because we've been following Julian Assange in his political persecution, and so in that sense. But let's move on a little bit. So sort of the first topic, again, I wanted to have this bit of a conversation, and Anastasia's here. She's gonna inject, and she has a background, Russia, and you live in Italy. So I wanted to do that. But what do we think of what will change after the recent EU election results, especially towards BRICS?
So that's a good question. First of all, maybe we should first agree on what the word change means. Because if we are talking about a political change, a change the positions of governments, I would have to say that I do not think anything will change for the moment, because the European Union member states have no real sovereignty. The European Union was born as a projective protectorate, to be kind, of the Anglo-American entity, and does not foresee in its constitution of the European Union and in its real politic also any possibility of emancipation through democratic ways. So the only chance to change is maybe through a complete change of everything, like revolutionary acts or something similar. I say this in view the fact that there have been several episodes in the last 30 years of attempts to break the European Union, and none of them have worked. Nothing, never. So yes, there was a Brexit, but let us not forget that the UK was not a defeated country in World War II, but a victor, a winner, that dictated the rules of the European Great Grade after World War II. So, in fact, the UK's exit from the European Union meant almost no change to the real political strength of the European Union. And on the contrary, it narrowed the possibility for the exit of other countries even further. And this was not only predictable, but in my opinion, it has been also desired by the European technocrats. And the conditions were all there, and the plan was followed to the perfection. So, in the other hand, just to be more positive, we are talking about a popular, or someone would say populist change. It will probably change the perception of the citizens of European countries. In particular, the perception of Europe's political weight in the international context. So it's said that the majority of citizens do not want war, are against the war, against every kind of war, against special military operation. They don't want the European countries entering in the war against Russia. They do not want sanctions, do not want any kind of troubles. And this may be true, and certainly with a careful statistical check, we could even confirm it. Personally, I do not have much faith neither in European citizens nor in statistics and polls, but let's take it positively. The problem remains that there is not enough effective action by citizens against the power system of the European member states. We are great at complaining on social networks, but we are sleeping in political militancy. So on the economic side, however, and maybe it's the possible actual change, speaking with Marx, the 20th century is indeed the triumph of economics over politics, which has become a superstructure and no longer the main structure. The BRICS Plus, as a geoeconomic partnership, not political or strategic alliance, means that international cooperation, in this case, only touches the political sphere as a side effect of economic interaction, a kind of reverse deterrence. Okay, so in this field, the European Union countries are in dire need of help of the BRICS in years of economic crisis to keep Europe under the US heel. Plus the weaker sanction imposed over the past 2 years and a half that have resulted in a general impoverishment of the whole Europe. So this places us at a crossroad, okay? Open up towards multipolar routes, accepting to participate in the new rules of the international game, accepting a polycentrism of the markets, or continue to have our blood sucked by the US, UK to the last drop. So the European elections have opened a glimmer, in my opinion, of hope for a cooperation of the BRICS, but only maybe in a parallel diplomacy, in a parallel action, not in the official one, because the European Union continues to declare itself as an enemy of Russia, China, Iran also, etc., that are three of the main countries of BRICS, and continues its provocation and proxy war against the great powers. And that's the point, that's the problem.
Yeah, and actually brings up that topic of which I would really like Anastasia and yourself to talk on, which is the Italy-Russia relationship.
Excuse me, Clive, I wanted to add some.
Go ahead, yeah.
Lorenzo told that European Union declares officially being an enemy to Russia, to China, but European Union in general, like a union of 27, how many we are, 28 countries, does not have foreign policy agenda. They do not have such a document. They do not have like a foreign minister for all European Union. So where it comes from to be declared entire European Union being an enemy of a country of this or another one. So
Right.
it comes from over the seas, I guess.
It is,
So-
absolutely yes. That's a point. Which is missing. Just to add one thing to your words, Anastasia, this was very, very important. When in the treaties of Maastricht they invented the European Union, and we have to remember that first they invented the European Market Community. There was a famous leader of a state, I don't remember, maybe it was from Germany, something like, maybe Minister of Economics, that said, okay, but we don't have now a common policy to lead Europe. And they were like, there was the NATO agents was like, you don't need it. You have us to lead you. And that's remaining the problem. That's it, actually.
So entire European Union is being like a sheep with a shepherd, and shepherd stays somewhere in another continent.
Yes, and they have this. They're threatening
So-
Russia.
Yeah, from this point of view, the elections in Europe, they do not bring fresh air. So everything will remain the same, maybe with some different people on seats, but in general, the weather forecast is always the same. There is a bloc, there is one who says what to do, others say okay, and so there is no foreign policy, common foreign policy. There is no common economic policy in the European Union. And so elections, yes, now we see there are some changes from green to white, from yellow to red. But in general, the general policy does not change. And about BRICS, well, we know that all European countries, one by one, they have economic affairs with Russia, with Brazil, with China mostly. They are partners. But as a bloc, as a union, they declare themselves rivals.
I think it's an anti-sovereignty type situation, which is, I think, a good point you both bring up with, especially we're bringing Lorenzo into this discussion, who's from Italy. Putin has spoken about how, President Putin has spoken about how that Italy is really the only European country, so a specific country, Italy, where it is still possible to have a dialogue with. Is this accurate? And, what can you say to our audience about Italy in this context?
Italy in this context, Italy till 1994 was the fourth economy in the world. Everybody loves Italy. Let me say, it's not because I'm Italian, I'm not joking, but it's a country full of art, beauty, multicultural, okay? And we are the natural prothesis of European land in the Mediterranean Sea. That means we are very strategic. That's why after World War II, Americans set the biggest number of military bases in Italy and not in the other countries, because they knew that to control the Mediterranean, they could control the access to the Middle East and to Africa. And this was very strategic. So they needed also to fix those possible new developments for, it was already the period of anti-colonialism starting the beginning, that they were looking forward to the future. They knew how to do it. They knew that they needed to spend a lot of money to buy politicians, to buy enterprises, to buy the companies, to set their tentacles everywhere. That's why Italy arrived to be actually one of the latest countries in the world, because, as Anastasia was telling before, nothing changed. Can you imagine that in these European elections, okay, the perception of people in Italy, but also in other European countries, was, okay, now the populist front is going to win. And that means that we will have finally our emancipation by the control of the NATO. Yeah, the point is, 2 points. The leadership class by the populists in Europe, that is made, most of them are from the right, okay, right parties. They've been literally educated, grown by the United States, by American agents, in American universities, okay? And second of that, when they arrive after the elections to divide the votes, they gave the votes to Ursula von der Leyen, that is actually the leader of the most globalist policy that we have in the world, okay? The most American, the most anti-Russian, etc. So, as you can see, it was literally a fake to have different positions, because they find a right to gain the same points that they wanted by both directions, but from two different ways. That has been an incredible joke to all the European citizens. And we didn't have time to discuss this. Nobody was talking about that. And that's a problem, because we really, one of my best friend, a famous journalist, we were talking about this before the election, and he was like, but honestly, which other options do you have? Try to put yourself in the position of the people. Which options do you have more? Because between the candidates, that's it. They are all by the same origin, same premises. And with the same premises, Aristotle was teaching this very well, you will arrive, of course, to the same conclusions. It's very interesting, and I conclude. the numbers of these elections, more than the half of the people in Europe didn't vote. And this is very, very interesting, because if it's true that democracy is the government of the majority, there wasn't a majority.
No.
Exactly.
There wasn't a majority.
In some countries, let me add, in some countries, the number of voters were less than 20%.
Yeah.
That's not democracy at all.
So what we are talking about democracy, who is that demos who chose their government? Less than 20%, 20%. If I'm let me remember well which countries were some new arrivals to European Union, I guess, from Latvia, Lithuania. So we may see that people they see that there is no choice. This or that, left or right, green or yellow. In the end, the result is always the same.
That sounds like apathy, pessimism. Yeah, I mean, you can't even have some energy, something to put forward from a base where there's no sovereignty. I mean, I think I have an understanding of this, and I want to bring up this topic too, because about the G7 and multilateralism, because Lorenzo, you brought this up with the G7, which is Canada, France, Germany, Italy, Japan, the United Kingdom, and the USA. So just to make sure that people know who they are, right? Because they're said many times, but who are they, right? You know, how could they actually cooperate instead of conflict with multilateral organizations like BRICS? Now, this is a sort of a point about multilateralism, right? And I think this is fairly sort of moving from the topic we were just talking about. But that, I would put that up there. What do you think?
We are ruled, as I said in St. Petersburg Forum, by real dinosaurs of geopolitics. The leaders of the G7 countries have all grown up in old school of diplomatic arrogance, threats, embarrassing gossip, and no content. The G7 countries are the laughing stock of the entire world. They keep coming together thinking that they are the majority of the international community, but they only represent a little portion of the world, not all of it. So as long as this political bullying does not come down, no cooperation will be possible. Just to be serious, just to be professional. The BRICS have received more than 30 applications for membership and are already the most powerful partnership in the world. They have completely rewritten the rules of diplomacy by devising a soft power that has factually reshaped international balances. No one can deny this, and more importantly, no one can ignore it longer. So, in order to cooperate with BRICS, the G7 countries, in my opinion, should first accept the departure from Anglo-American control. This is the essential condition, and is already described in the statute of the BRICS that states incompatibility with colonial imperialism, something like, I don't remember the exact words, but all G7 countries are UK-US colonies with military, political, economical, and cultural occupation. Because I would like to subline this. When you have military bases of another country in your country, this is called occupation. Secondly, an opening up of a national economic policy to partnership. And we need a legal adaptation to these new forms of cooperation. It's very necessary because it's something still upset in the G7 countries, which are almost all tied to the Atlantic Pact model and its various processes. So the institutional vacuum must be filled, and the shortcomings in international law must be resolved. Lastly, a willingness for self-determination would also be needed on the economic front, agreeing to redefine their own markets outside the dollar and its royalties scattered across all the sectors of the Western trade. So the G7 should stop thinking themselves as the only G's, the only greats of the world. Without this, any kind of cooperation is possible.
Well, Lorenzo, do you remember that Russia was once a member of G8, as they used to call that? So when it was G7, then G8, and so the majority of well-developed countries, economically strong, they decided to bring Russia in their community. But suddenly, in 2014, correct me if I'm wrong, they said, no, we don't want you anymore.
Yes.
Because
What is that? How
we don't want
rude.
you anymore because you are aggressor. You after Crimea annexation
Oh,
in 2014, so they decided we don't want you anymore. So Russia, in 5 minutes, became out of that group of well-developed economies. But at the same time, Russia was part of BRICS because BRICS was organized in 2009. And so years ago, it was not a problem to have Russia being a part of BRICS, a part of G8, and so on. Today, there is a problem everywhere for the Russian Federation. But this year, Lorenzo, I would like to ask your opinion about it. Narendra Modi was invited to G7, and Narendra Modi is a Prime Minister of India, one of the countries who founded BRICS. In your opinion, what for he was invited? Why?
This is one of the most important, difficult points to understand about international politics of India. I will try to explain quickly. First of all, India comes from a very different kind of civilization. They have a different approach to life, to domestic policy, and to the international one. And this is interesting because Narendra Modi actually set himself, when he was starting his career, as a philo-liberal, philo-Western politician, because as we know, India has been one of the most important, maybe the most important colony of the United Kingdom. And still today, there is a huge influence of all the Anglo-Saxon world in India. And this happened with some kind of, we could say, oligarchs, but are not oligarchs, but something similar. Many of the people of the elite of India comes from families strictly connected to the UK. And that's very important because for the internal domestic balance of politics, this means a lot. Narendra Modi has said, arrived that he was a philo-liberal politician, and then he became more nationalist, but in the Indian sense. It's a kind of nationalism that is very different. For example, one of his favorite philosophers is Bill Talak. Bill Talak is, nobody knows him. He was a traditionalist of the true tradition of India philosopher. So it's something very unusual, okay? If we think that he is actually maintaining, in Italy we say, two feet in two shoes, okay? He's working by one side with the BRICS, and I will tell one thing more very important in BRICS. With BRICS, because it's one of the strongest economy one of the countries with a bigger number of people, so for demographic statistics, and third, atomic bomb. As we know, after World War II, atomic bomb remains the main deterrence tool that we have for international relations. In the opposite side, India is still working, let me say, still smiling to the West, to UK especially, but most of all to United States, because India is the most centered country in Asia. So if we look to Asia as its own continent, so we have Central Asia, Western Asia, Eastern Asia. India is the only one open to the sea. And in that sea, India has no effectively the control, military control. And military control, that means also the control of all the market ways for international commerce. So imagine India, this kind of things changes step by steps in the life. Happened the same with Russia, happened the same with China. Imagine if tomorrow Narendra Modi said, okay, let's jump out from all the alliances with the West. What would happen? It's too much open to the sea. Half of the exchanges, commercial exchanges going to the east would be blocked. They have hundreds of military maritime bases from the NATO in that sea. And last but not least, India has an internal control with all the social problems enough strong to block any kind of possible false flag and colored revolution. So there is not yet the right frame, to say goodbye to the West. That's very interesting. In my opinion, BRICS are using, it's literally my very personal opinion, BRICS are using India as an instrument inside of these Western allies. Why I wanted to say one thing more. When they created BRICS, there was the problem with Iran. Problem with Iran and India, because as you know, one of the biggest troubles with India is the integration of Muslims.
Yeah.
But Muslims represent 2.5 billion people in the world. Muslims represent the 90% of the religions around India and crossing all that lands that are down between the sea and the Russian Federation and the continent's countries. So this means that you can't exclude it. If you exclude Muslims, and in India there is a very aggressive policy against Muslims, to create BRICS, they needed to have the door opened to the Muslim world. So they asked to Iran to join. And Iran, as we know, is an Islamic republic. Shiites, not Sunnis, but it's an Islamic republic. So they balanced like that this cooperation. That's why, for example, in the last months has been Iran to lead the main dialogues with African countries and with Russia, African countries and Middle East countries. And India was looking to East and to the Southeastern Asia, because that's natural. We need to respect these very delicate balances if we want to promote a true kind of multipolarity. Because we have to remember that BRICS is born as an economic partnership, not made for international.
Well, did you know, Lorenzo, that well, maybe you read also today was the information that Narendra Modi's official visit will be in Moscow.
The 8th of July, yeah.
Yeah. So, Narendra Modi 2 weeks ago was invited to G7 meeting. Now he will go to Kremlin to balance, I guess, his strategic position somehow.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Let's say,
Cool.
let's do. I really think that he will arrive and he was like, "Hello, Vova, I'm here." He was like, "Oh, let's report what they said in their private conversation." Would be, drinking a raffle together. It would be very funny because this is like it's functioning. India. I want only to add one thing, Anastasia, because it's very funny. India has been, Clive. I don't know, maybe you know it, but India has known in the past during the colonialist period, especially the end of the 19th century. It's been known because it was full of spies that were, officers, governors of regions, that you could really buy them faithfulness for nothing. And so there were some of them that were invited to European countries, and they were buying their faithfulness, only sharing with them a cup of tea or coffee. So, of course, just to don't be offensive, but it's very simple to promote different kind of levels in these activities, because we always have one main road and several roads beside at different levels. And what is very important in political communication, it's not what actually is, but what is communicated. The feedback is the most important thing. So we see one thing on our screens, that is what they wanted us to see. That is what they want to share, to let other countries, ministers, governments start to think and understand. This is how work this kind of usual soft power and diplomacy. And that's very important. Modi was there, now we'll go to Moscow. I would expect him to go also to China maybe in the next months.
Yeah.
Because Vladimir Putin was closing Eurasia in the last 2 weeks, visiting all the Eastern Asian countries. So everything is finding the right place.
Yeah, that's interesting actually. I want to bring up something Anastasia shared not long before the show. It's an Italian party, but what I glossed through it, but I read enough of it to get a good idea. I think this is very interesting. I think the audience, if you have a look at this document, the link will be below. I think you'll find it's very, very interesting. A lot of what Lorenzo just sort of talked about. So Michelle Garaci, head of Foreign Affairs and International Trade Department.
Geraci it's a former consultant in the MFA of Italy.
Okay. No, this is good. This is what I thought I should bring, but it was excellent. And as I go, I want to bring up the next topic. Oh no, go Lorenzo. You're going to say something?
No, yes, one thing. Geraci is a very good person. I know him. He was the one who promoted with another party. He promoted the Belt and Road Initiative with Italy, the one that has been closed 3 months ago by the actual government. So he was one with Movimento 5 Stelle, the movement 5 Stars, to promote this Belt and Road Initiative. And actually, it was a very good opportunity for Italy to enter again in the Silky Way to China, because Italy have relations with China since Marco Polo, so hundreds of years, and this has been closed completely. And now we have companies from Italy that are moving to other countries like Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, Indonesia, because they want to continue their trade with China, but they can't do it from Italy.
Oh, okay. Well, this I wanted to show this, and I've showed this before, and you reference about India and the British Empire, and I don't think it gets enough, and I'm in Australia, right? So this diagram, I've showed it a few times before, and I'm going to continue to show it, is reference to Australia, but if you notice in this diagram, the Bank for International Settlements, which runs all central banks across the world, is detailed here and actually sits on top. So this is not only relevant for Australia, but for the world. So I wanted to show that and bring up sort of the next topic, which is, in the true reality, we're a closed world system, an oligarchical system that primarily controls all the countries, including Russia and China, within a criminal financial empire, which I'm showing the diagram of. And it's known as the modern British Empire. And I bring this up, where, Anastasia and Lorenzo, you're talking about the EU, Russia, India, political multipolarity. Because we were just talking about multilateralism with the EU, right, where there's sort of this fake, because you were just saying the G7 countries are controlled by the UK, US. They have bases there, right? So it's really multilateralism. But I sort of want to move the topic to multipolarity. And in the context of what I'm showing you here in this diagram, I mean, is there multipolarity? Is that possible? I'm sort of putting that up there, but I want you, if you could speak on it.
Yeah, so this is one of the most beautiful points. I mean, this is a very interesting question. While it's true that since the imposition of the Admiralty law in the West and its extension to various parts of the world through colonialism, most countries have been subjected to an Anglo-centric system of control. And it's equally true that there are countries which are now big powers that have remained outside of the total control of this system of international financial power, but accepting only certain aspects of it. The British Empire could never have become such a big, important empire without those legal foundations, which define the status quo of things. So, a multipolar world is based on the recognition of the equality of civilizations and culture, each of which forms its own cosmos, which means to have its own civilization. Every civilization has its own logos, its own code of values, its own laws, its own identity and spirit. And this idea that should shape the foundations of the social, political, economic system, which each civilization creates independently. There are no universal rules for all civilization, and none of them has the right to impose its rules on other civilizations. The meaning of a multipolar world is that humanity is made up of these independent and sovereign entities that we call civilizations, and therefore that the system of international relations should be built taking into account their differences. The concept of a pole, what is a pole, is fundamental because a pole is autonomous, independent entity with its own axis and an attractive core. It does not need the others. A pole can be a nation state according to the modern concept, but also a civilization state, as a contemporary doctrine teaches, or a people or religious groups, etc. Multilateralism is a little bit different, and the presence of a pole is not necessary in multilateralism. Several actors suffice, and herein lies the important difference is that multilateralism is still possible maintaining hegemonies, imperialism, and every kind of dependencies. So the multipolar perspective offers a way of emancipation from all transnational potentates. And this, however, must start with an awakening of consciences, in my opinion, which is already started, already underway, and which must become stronger in an active participation of people in this global change. That's why it's very important. If we want, we are already, in my opinion, really living this. Someone called this great awakening. Okay, And we should really call this as a great awakening of consciences. And this pass through an educational process to assimilate what multipolarity is. And we have to pay attention, and I conclude, already we have many different interpretations of what is multipolarity, and we are starting to have some problems, because when a kind of hegemonic system catch that you are sharing something that can really destroy his game and change the rules, usually the system starts to get your words, your meanings, and to manipulate them. That's why it's important to try to remain attached to a kind of orthodoxy of the multipolarity.
Well,
That's great.
would you give us your definition of multipolarism?
That's it. I already said. I mean, no, really. This is very important. Many people think are afraid of this because we didn't have any alternatives before. This is a topic we were discussing. This happened a lot in Europe. When I talk with my students, with colleagues, with people, it's very hard to let them understand multipolarism because they think, oh, multipolarism means that now we exit from this room where we are under the control of United States, and we enter in another one where we are under the control of Russia, China, India. No, that's not. And it's hard to see that we aren't able to think in a different way than this. They really set our minds to be slaves, and that's terrible. We are not able to imagine alternatives. One time, a friend of mine told me, multipolarity actually could be based only on dreaming differently as we learn to do. And that's the point. Because if you ask to some politicians concretely, okay, remaining in real politics, not talking about maximum systems of political philosophy, which is your dream for your country, your dream from your people, their perspectives is just a couple of days, weeks, months later where you're now, by your position. You can't ask them, okay, but let's try to see, because during elections, everybody's telling, oh, let's go out from NATO, oh, let's go out from European Union, or etc. But when you ask them if they really believe in this, they don't know what to answer, because deeply inside they don't believe in that, because they actually didn't have the instruments, the tools to develop their own thoughts about that. So we are very poor in this. There is a gap in education for generations of leaders, of diplomats, both in politics and in economics. And we are suffering a lot with missing. When I sit to my students, they are not able to think about the future. How is possible when you are 20 years old, you should imagine your future, maybe crazy, but you should have in front of you the wall perspectives, a panorama of possibilities and ideas. We really need to let people believe again in something. That's why Russia, for example, it's not asking to Italy or to Europe or to other Western countries to become colonies of Russia or of China, etc. They are showing them a way to go out from that hegemony. That's one important thing. I absolutely believe that the future of Italy, the future of European countries, mustn't be under another hegemonic control. This would be the epic fail of multipolarity. We need now a help to go out from this trap that is oppressing us since already 75 years, and it's too much, okay? Starts to be very complicated, because now that they want to do a proxy war truly in the territories of Europe, the problem is not more theoretical, it's pragmatical. And people are starting to ask themselves, okay, now maybe we have to stop, ancient Romans, the Latins used to say, panem et circenses, to set the people, to let them stay calm. You only need, in Italy, spritz, appetizers, something to drink, prosecco, and football. When you have the Champions League, you solve all the problems. And now the problem is that they're truly positioning all the things to enter in the war. And so, you are starting to miss money to go out with your friends to watch the football match. You are starting to see that around you something military is truly moving, and maybe they starting to ask themselves, okay, so it was not a joke, because they were playing like if we were children for 75 years. So we don't have this honest comprehension of the reality. And now we have to jump in this cold lake with only one step. And I don't know if we are truly ready to do that, even because, and I finish, if we want to count the real possibilities that we have, Italy, but in general the European countries, altogether we don't arrive to have neither the half of the military power of Russia. So mathematically impossible to win a war. This is a human sacrifice. This is a massacre, well planned in all details. We start with one country, we will arrive to another country, and this has always been the American project for Europe. Every time some European countries was arriving to, change the so-called rules-based order of the European context, they introduced economical crisis, they introduced some military operation, they introduced some diplomatic problems. They started to try to attempt and kill the leaders of Europe, as we saw in the last months. Okay, so when you arrive to play so dirty, it's really because you are at the end of your possibilities.
Yeah, that I wonder, the what we're doing here, like just tonight, we're talking about BRICS and this channel continuously, right? And with a sense of optimism. It sounds to me like what you're saying, Lorenzo. This is an important part of the youth transitioning and getting an idea of multipolarity, of something that they don't know is even possible. I'm not old enough. I do remember Russia when it was a Soviet Union, but I knew nothing of the Soviet Union. I've always lived in the British colony, Australia, and it has a certain sense, right? It's a constitutional monarchy. Here they call it a democracy. It's not even a democracy. I actually wanted to bring up this subject a little bit too, about political philosophy, but maybe, you come back and we can get into that, because I think there will be parts of our audience, if not all, that would be interested to hear someone as yourself, a professor, talk about political philosophy in that sense. But we're almost at an hour. We're going to keep going until the producer says, no, we're going to stop, because I want to bring up.
Excuse me, Clive. I wanted to add, Lorenzo told that the young generations today, they cannot dream. But this is the fault of years of training to be a perfect consumer. For years, decades, we have been trained to be as a perfect consumer. We were taught to dream about a nice car, expensive house, fashion clothes, and so on. Something materialistic.
Yeah.
And this is not a problem only for European countries. Even in Russia, if you stop at the metro station 2, 3 young people, I don't know, and ask how do you see your future in 5, 7 years, they will not answer. They will not answer.
Even in Russia.
And unfortunately, this period of that comfy, cozy well-being is going to its end. It's going to its end. If we are ready or not, we are ready. It's coming to its end, and I think, yes, the meeting with reality for majority of young people today will be not so pleasant, I think, but it will be, and we should overpass this moment, because only shared difficulties, may allow people to think otherwise than they got used to.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree with you.
So
yeah, we have this, just to bring it, we're going to keep going. And as I say, until the director says, no, that's it, we're going to keep going. But political philosophies within the BRICS. So there's a fictional reference. Well, some people may not say it's fictional, actually, about George Orwell's 1949 dystopian novel, 1984. Now, I have a problem with George Orwell and the background, but we'll go with this for now. So, in that book, the world is divided into 3 superstates: Oceania, Eurasia, and East Asia. And they're all fighting each other in a perpetual war in a disputed area, mostly located around the equator. It's just a reference, but, I just wanted to reference that. What are some of the key political philosophies that underpin the BRICS Plus alliance? And how do these differing political philosophies impact the cohesion and decision-making process within the BRICS Plus group?
So, there are a number of philosophies that have been taken to support this change, this multipolarity, multipolar change. Certainly, the main one is the theory of the multipolar world of Professor Alexander Galievich Dugin. That is the undisputed father of multipolarism. He wrote the first pages of his doctrine in the early 80s. So, but also his for political theory, which is definitely important, and which we'll perhaps talk about again in the future. In China, for example, so looking to the east, there is a rediscovery of Confucianism, and I am reminded of the important work of Professor Chang Weiwei, whose contribution is leading the whole East Asia towards a new order. Similarly happens in Korea, okay? India is focusing, we were talking about this before, in the ideas of multilateralism. Africa sees itself now in the center of the greatest change of civilizational model in the last maybe 200 years, with a Pan-Africanism theory, doctrine, being declined in various forms, emphasizing the importance of negritude on the link with the great Mother Africa, with the original cults and religions before the colonization, religious colonization of Christianity and Islam. Similarly, in Ibero-America, where we see a gradual reassertion of groups that combine ancestral traditions with the concept of multipolarism. There are some really good authors, I think, for Rafael Machado, Lucas Leiros, Joaquim Flores, and others. In Europe, too, there is, but also Pepe Escobar. In Europe, there is the possibility of reactivating good thinking minds that reaffirm a kind of European autonomy, Eurocentric, Mediterranean-centric philosophies, maybe. But we have a lack in this production, because we have many thinkers that worked for themselves, and they in most part of times they never tried to do something together. In the past, we had authors like Alain de Benoit in France. We had Carlo Terracciano in Italy, who passed away a few years ago, and they have been very important authors theorizing a different possible philosophy for this world. I'm pretty sure something like is happening also in the United States of America. United States of America, we have now, it's happening something that is completely unusual. They started to have, with the latest elections, 2016, okay, 8 years ago already, wow, the first election where Donald Trump won the elections. They started to have this different set. The coasts were voting very differently than the countries inside, than the states that are in the land inside. And this produced like a big opposition between central states and the coast. And this produced a big, let me say, big problem for internal security. And the United States are living such a kind of civil law war with a very low profile, maintained in a level that you don't have to be worried too much about that. But there is no more the kind of unity that we were before. It's like they are living a birth of something completely new inside of the United States that is trying to block the hegemony of the United States by the United States. So there are starting now to be some authors, I think, to the school of Marxist MAGA, the Make America Great Again, so Trumpist, neocon, but Marxist. That's something crazy, very American mix. And they are starting to produce, really starting, because they didn't have theories in this. The world century, the world 20th century, they only had, now we can say, because it's that, the international killer, Henry Kissinger, that he is the responsible of the biggest number of people killed, innocent people killed in the 20th century, actually. It's a fact, it's a history. He will be maybe remembered as the most important diplomat of the 20th century. But what he has done is that he promoted an incredible number of wars with consequences, and destroyed also all the relation between Eurasia and America. And they had John Mearsheimer, one of the fathers of the realism in international relations. He has been kicked off a couple of months, 3-4 months ago, by his university, because he tried to say that maybe the Department of State was doing a mistake to try to provoke and attack Russia. And so we need, you see, all of what we call the collective West. We have this gap. Now we need to fill this vacuum, this empty space, with new thinkers. I really hope that the next generation of thinkers, of leaders, maybe not the next one, but maybe in a couple of generations, I really hope the next one anyway, we will have almost 3-4 authors ready to give something new to the people and to start to think with their identities, their state civilization, their tradition and history, and not trying to copy over versions of a possible world. That would be very important, in my opinion.
Yeah, that's interesting. Oh, very interesting. I think people are going to rewind what you just said there and watch that again, because that's very interesting. We've got to have you back again, Lorenzo, to
Definitely.
talk more about this. Yeah, because I can see Anastasia. She should just interview you by herself and just do something about Russia. and Italy, and and this, because it's a really important conversation. We started off, you were talking about the EU and these issues, and this is sort of what I want to end off too on, is the trade and economic sanctions, particularly with the frozen assets. I'm not sure whether you can talk on this, but this is a real issue, because we not only have the war, the military, but we also have the economic sanctions, which are not working, and they're just destroying Europe, right? But what do you think will be the consequences of this? But I want to know. I think
less than 1 minute. I think that the answer is simple. Russia does not. We need the West European banks.
Yeah.
First, they don't need us. First, it's Europe that needs Russian resources. Economically, Europe has only ever lost so far. The sanctions have been a disaster, and everybody has realized that by now, politically speaking, the behavior of European countries is a self-inflicted euthanasia, the worst masochism, a kind of endless torture that is tearing people apart. This action does nothing but sour relations with Russia. Nothing could be more stupid. Russia doesn't need those money. I mean, yeah, there are a lot of money. Sanctions produce an incredible, fast increase of Russian economy. They don't need it. We have European leaders that are thinking, oh, now we will block, as our Italian Prime Minister say, now we will block the money of Russians and we will use them to send weapons to Ukraine. Okay, thank you. You already did 14 blocks of sanctions, and the consequence is that you are poor and we are rich. Continue. Let's go on. Of course, you're a genius. Maybe one day you will maybe need to use those money for yourself, but not to send weapons to Ukraine.
I would hope so. We have to end off. The director has said, look, we got to close. So again, thank you so much, Professor Pacini, for coming. And please return. We'll keep in touch. And thanks, Anastasia, for coming this time and discussing
Thank
more.
you for inviting me.
Of course. All right, we'll close it off. Thank you very much again.
Well, thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to BRICS Briefs. If you've enjoyed this dive into the multipolar world and wish to join the conversation, please comment below. Please like and share this episode to spread it as far as possible. You can follow us on our Substack and other social media platforms, especially our Telegram channel, please. All linked below. Stay curious, stay connected, stay optimistic, and let's keep exploring together. Ciao.